Hello and welcome back to the AI Conversation podcast. My name's Harry Chamberlain, a junior consultant at IBM, and today I'm joined by my co-host.
Morning everyone, I'm Kavi, junior consultant also here at IBM.
This week we've got an amazing guest on the show, Bassinder, an AI expert, Cambridge University alumni, and has worked for the company for over 26 years at IBM. Jez, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, really interested to hear your insights and how you developed your career. This week we'll dive into three main topic areas. Firstly, who Bassinder is and what his story is. Secondly, how he successfully engaged and inspired clients to adopt AI. And finally, what is Jez's outlook on the future of AI and where does he see opportunity to develop it into our clients?
Jez, we asked the question to Michael Coleman and Seb as well.
Okay.
What do you do and why do you do it?
Wow. Okay, so what do? I lead IBM's generative AI and what's next consulting capability here in the UK and Ireland, and I'm part of the team that is trying to transform the way that IBM consultants work with our clients, yes, also transform the way that our clients deliver products and services to their customers, citizens, employees, how we govern all of this stuff, and how we as a consulting organisation can change the way that we work. So those are the three things. Another dimension of what I do is I'm what's called IBM calls an industry diamond, and I'm focused. My industry is the consumer industry. Really, I'm a consumer goods guy. I will turn my hand to retail occasionally, but really, I'm passionate about how coffee gets into cups, how beans get into tins, and why we choose to buy those products. So it's that combination of my technology, my industry. And I'd like to think a little bit about my creativity, and that's really why I get up in the morning, is to bring my creativity to those components, and then try and inspire the next generation of IBMers and consultants to go and think and be creative.
And so a bit into your background, so what did you study and what's your journey been like getting into AI now?
Okay, so I'm from a state school background. I grew up in the north of England, as you can probably tell from my accent, and I went to a comprehensive in Huddersfield, and from that I did my A-levels in Huddersfield, and then I went to Cambridge. So I went to Cambridge, where I went to St John's College, which is one of the colleges of Cambridge, and I studied natural sciences. The natural sciences is Cambridge's tripos around science, tripos being referring to the stool that you used to sit on to take your exams, way back in the day, way before I was involved in it. And really you started with a breadth of science to begin with, and then it kind of built up into a single subject. And so in the first year I did maths, physics, chemistry and material science. Was pretty awful at material science. So I've met material scientists subsequently, and how they managed to survive that course is beyond me. But I take my hat off to them. And in the second year, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to be, and I still don't know what I want to be. And so I saw that they had a course on experimental psychology, and I found that fascinating. So I did chemistry and experimental psychology in my second year. But ultimately, I've been a chemist. I loved chemistry at A-level, and so in the end, I decided against the route with psychology, and I went down the path of chemistry. And I got offered a PhD, and I then applied to a number of consultancies as well, because I kind of found that while I enjoyed chemistry a lot and I liked the scientific method, I sort of found I couldn't see myself just being in a lab on my own for the rest of my life. I mean, I'm a very much a people person. I like being around people, and I like the energy that I get from being around people. And also, I wasn't very good in the lab. You know, my final year paper was supposed to be called the dilithiation of an indole. Doesn't matter what that is. The final paper was called the attempted dilithiation of an indole because it didn't work. And so from that sort of scientific background, I applied to a variety of consultancies, and I didn't get to any of the sort of classic strategy houses, your McKinseys and so on. but I did get into a couple of IT consultancies, and got through their tests, I got through their interviews, and that was PW was the one that I decided on, and that obviously became PwC, and then was acquired by IBM, and that's why I'm here 26 years later.
So let's delve into kind of your career. How have you developed it? Where did you start, and how have you ended up in AI, I suppose?
Where did I start? I started out being taught how to program. So my induction course was 14 weeks when I first started, which most people, when they look at that now, go like, good grief. Those were different times, and they were. And the induction group I had was a mixed set of skills. So we didn't hire just technologists, we hired English students and maths students and geographers and you name it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And actually I think we'll come back to that full circle actually, because I think it was really important. All of us on that course had a certain something. I think the way we thought about things or how we thought logically meant that we had an ability to work with technology. And so I did that training, and then I went and learnt PeopleSoft, which was it's a bit like SAP. It's subsequently been acquired by Oracle. PeopleSoft was very much an HR engine, finance engine, but then they also had a CRM solution, which I went and did CRM as well. So initial projects I did with PeopleSoft were finance, supply chain, order management type stuff. And then I went into doing some stuff in HR. Then I went over and did CRM for a little while, but always a common platform of PeopleSoft.
So sorry, just in case our viewers don't know what CRM.
Oh, customer relationship management. My apologies. How you interact with your customers and track your customers' needs and wants. And that, to go and build that particular thing in CRM, it was for Polish Telecom, and I went and ran the infrastructure team. So building servers, connecting, all sorts of stuff, which I didn't know anything really about hardware. And so I went and ran that team, and we went from a 3-person team to a 25-person team in just under a couple of years. And then as I was sort of coming out of that program, they asked me to run the deployment program that went on with that CRM solution, which was to 36 call centers in 8 weeks. Across Poland to 11 million customers. And then I moved back into the HR technology piece for a while and did various things around building HR systems for various organisations. And I got interested in workforce analytics and started to look at how you might use data. I wrote a paper on a share price for HR. And my idea was that there's the actual facts of what the data is telling you, of what is happening, and the perception of what is happening. And so I liken that to a share price, in the sense that perception of what's happening in a company really matters. And so I came up with this idea of how you might track that. And about that time I went to do an implementation up in Manchester of an HR system that was a very short implementation timeline, and that got me doing some work in HR implementation there, but then also into the bank asked me to stay on and do some more work with them, which was very nice. And at that time I was still dabbling with the workforce analytics, even though I was kind of doing some work in banking and what have you. And a partner, I think he was an associate partner at the time, maybe just been a partner, wanted to do a talk at the Institute of Directors, which is just over the water from where we are, on the future of work. And so I went and I did this talk and with him and started to prepare this talk, and I sent him my deck, and he looked at my PowerPoint and went, oh my goodness, nobody else can do. He come from Accenture, and he said, they're brilliant at doing PowerPoint. In IBM, you've not been so good at doing PowerPoint. Your PowerPoints look a bit boring, but yours are not like that. And so that's how I got into this conversation. And he was running the Unilever account, and so I went to work on the Unilever account with him. And that's when my interest in consumer products started. And I worked on Unilever from 2009 to 2019. And Unilever is very much a marketing organisation. at its heart. It has incredible products, incredible brand messaging, and so on. And so inevitably, I moved closer and closer and closer to the consumer and the customer. Customer being Tesco or Sainsbury's for them, and the consumer being us. And so then, as I did more and more work with Unilever, I got closer and closer to the consumer, and that brought me to IX and customer transformation. But also in that time, I became interested in why people buy. Maybe that goes back to my psychology heritage. And so an opportunity came about between a combination of some sustainability work that I'd done around a technology strategy for their sustainable business, which I wrote in 2013 with a number of colleagues, where we talked about cities and cities being important. And then some analytics work that myself and Glenn Finch, who leads our generative AI team, one of the 4 leaders of our generative AI team in IBM, went and were talking to a client about over at Unilever. And these things kind of coincided, this combination of sustainability, psychology and analytics. And we went and built something that we called City Analytics. And that became, I got a patent for that with the other people that were doing the hardcore maths. Mine was the sort of business thinking on it. And then as I finished up at Unilever, I spent more and more time in customer transformation. And I then went and led our Salesforce business for a while, then led our Salesforce Adobe and SAP CX business. And then about this time last year, I got asked, would I be interested in going and setting up our generative AI COE for the UK and Ireland as part of the team that we're going to go and do this. Rahul said, come and do this, and that's what I've been doing since, and it's been quite a ride. So I'm not a deep AI expert. I have got a mathematical background, science background, but I'm really interested in how AI and people, whether they're consumers, citizens, employees and so on, and how they work together, and that's really what fascinates me.
So for that last year and a half, what have you been specifically doing?
So it started out with, because that kind of coincided with the launch of our technology platform for generative AI, Watson X, but also all of our partners' platforms, whether that's Microsoft or AWS or Adobe or whoever we work with, or Salesforce. Right? Yeah. And so my mission really was about all of that. But initially, we focused on how do we go and talk to clients about generative AI. And really, it's not just about the Michael Conway would say that generative AI is a bit of a misnomer. What we're talking about is foundation models, really, and what we're talking about is how, and particularly language in this instance. We'll get onto other things in I'm sure. But our ability for models to understand human language, which actually we've been working on for decades. I mean, you can go back to the original Watson Jeopardy challenge. It's essentially the sort of big idea was, can a machine answer a natural language question in sub-seconds? And so, we've been doing this for a long time, and it's now reached a point where you can do this thing at a different kind of scale, and you bring together combinations of cloud technology, brilliant mathematics, interesting ways of thinking, and you can suddenly understand human language in a way that we haven't been able to do before, albeit we have been doing things in and around natural language for many, many years. The other thing that I think has happened is you've got consumer grade experience happening on top of this maths. And so over the year then, really what I've had to do is to try and go and explain this to senior people, our clients. And that what's interesting is because we've got that heritage and we're well recognised in this space, crikey, we were at the original meeting where the term AI was coined, clients trust us. And we have a pretty good record of how we think about this stuff. Our ethics are very strong about how you should use it. And so what we've done in the first instance was talking to senior people about how they can understand it, for a starting point, and what is the layman's terms around this stuff, because it's really quite intimidating and quite complicated, or it could be. And so we did a lot of work on that. I remember an early meeting, myself, Rahul and Michael, went with one of the data team to talk to a board, CEO, CFO, and Chief Strategy Officer, and we showed them some stuff as well. So yes, we talked to them about the technology, but then we showed them one of our capabilities that we're embedding within our consulting organisation, its early iterations of it, and they suddenly got it, and they could see what that might mean for their business. And then that led to a subsequent meeting where we presented to the whole board together, and again that's now leading to pilots and to scale. And so I've gone from that initial briefing piece to then executing probably hundreds of pilots, and some of those, majority of those, are starting to scale. But then we're into conversations about governance and how do you govern this stuff, and also how do you go and build centres of competence. And really what's now starting to interest me about for our own journey is how do I go and build capability across IBM so that everybody in our consulting team is using this technology with their clients day in, day out, and changing the way we work.
And you've touched on a point that I want to come on to now, and that's about embedding this into clients and really inspiring them to take that leap of faith, I suppose. So talk us through, when you go to a client, that initial stage, how do you engage them and inspire them? What's the initial conversation?
So I think, there's a couple of things that I think we've done quite well over the last year or so. The first is, often the business and IT are quite separate in organisations. There's a bit of a them and us type relationship. And in this particular topic, it's difficult because IT is supposed to understand this technology stuff when the business looks at them. The business is hearing all of this great buzz that's out there in the market about these things, and therefore they want to get to use this stuff, but frankly they don't really understand it either. And the truth for the IT team is, they might not understand this, and so there's this kind of barrier between the two sides of neither of them really deeply understand this. They all know little bits, they all know, and there might be some real experts, don't get me wrong, right? There are real experts out in every business. And so what we've tended to do is we've tended to bring a set of people together and then start from grassroots and build up. And over the course of about an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours briefing, we're able to bring people to a common level of understanding, and then they start to talk to one another about what they could go and do as a business. And out of that will come some sort of pilot that they'll do. And then the art is saying, well, okay, a pilot but without business value ultimately just becomes a toy. So what you have to bring together is, what is the value of doing that thing, and is it valuable in any case, and should we reject that and pick something else? And so it's really important to pull together the techniques of value orchestration and experience. So yes, you might have some great maths that can go and do something, but how do I go and work out what the value to my business is? And so you have to have good industry knowledge, but also good domain knowledge. So there's no point having an expert in HR transformation trying to work out what the value of adjusting the way that customers and consumers engage with you as a business. Okay, so you need the domain knowledge. You need the industry knowledge, because the way in which I might engage with consumers in a consumer goods company will be subtly different to how I do it in banking. It's the same consumer probably, but subtly different. And then you have to have an experience on it, and that's where you've got to lean in on our experience design team to bring, because if the experience is rubbish, we've all chatted with awful chatbots that give rubbish answers, difficult to navigate through, people don't understand, and it's not thought through as a customer or employee or citizen experience. And so you have to have these three things. You have to have amazing maths and technology, you have to have incredible understanding of the industry that you're working with and the domain, and you also have to have exceptional experience and how you are designing these things, and then how you are delivering them through a proper product engineering lifecycle. And you bring all of that together and you can start to take that to scale, because you've got the value, you've got the where it's going to make a difference. And some of the things that we've found and doing with clients are many $1 million worth of value for them. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been up to.
Busy time.
Yes, it has been I probably did, between June and December of last year, I think we did 60 briefings for clients, so that's like 2 a week. And these are not just kind of going and having a quick conversation. These are to very senior people with a... And I don't like rinsing and repeating the same slide deck, because yes, I'll use components, and anybody who's seen me talk will see, oh God, he's using that analogy again. But I do try and tailor our rhetoric for each client, because you've got to have that industry insight and that domain insight, and trying to understand who their consumer is, or who their customer is, or who their citizen is. And so, you know, whether we're talking to retailers or government departments, what we also then try and do is to tailor our demos in a way that we can show them the tools that we are using to change the way that we work, and then show how that might apply within their world, and do it live if we can. Sometimes the flow is so long around how I might go from an annual report to code, which is quite a stretch from one to the other, that I will have done it and then walk them through what I've done rather than run it live, but it's all real stuff.
So your engagement with clients, are they mainly focused on generating the initial interest? Are they proof of concepts? What are you kind of, when you're facing a client, what stage of the life cycle are you?
It can be all sorts of different stages, actually. So, and I'll give you a few examples. So I went over to a client in Eastern Europe. They're a UK-based client, but we were showing them some stuff at our delivery centre in Budapest. And I went and I did a 2-hour briefing, and there was only me that went. So it was relatively early days. I was sort of getting into the rhythm, but we did 2 hours, and it was it went really well. And we started to look at procurement. We hadn't really, when we first launched the use cases that we were interested in, there were 3 big use cases: customer, HR, and code. App modernisation, really. And we haven't really got the procurement use cases completely nailed yet. But we could see where the value might be, and we got a few ideas, and we were doing some stuff internally for ourselves. And we ended up on an idea. And then we've worked with that client since to go and build out this idea, and the technology works really well, and it's a fascinating area that will save them considerable money. And so that very first piece was pilot kind of stuff. Where do we go? Other clients have approached us about, how do we get our data in order? So we could run a pilot, but we're a bit worried about what our data looks like. And you know, Michael Conway said in one meeting, a very senior person asked him, where should we start? And he went, somewhere. And actually, I think that's really important. Start somewhere, start with some data, and build from that. Other clients are, in fact, we've got a hackathon going on at the moment with a client upstairs. And they are looking at how do they change the way they work in their software product delivery lifecycle. When they're building digital products, how can they apply the use of assistants and potentially agents to change the way that they work? We've had sessions on governance, and how do you govern this and put appropriate models in? How do you build centres of excellence? We're doing with some clients. So what initially started as largely, can we go and run a pilot to see if this can work, has now developed into many, many different streams of what clients might be interested in.
And what does a good engagement look like? What is the content of the engagement, and what's the ideal outcome when you're speaking to a client?
So the ideal outcome is that we generate some value for that client. It might be very small, it might be a specific thing that, you know, we might look at 50 documents and they find some value in those 50 documents, with a view to then how do they go to a much more scaled solution. That we start them on the journey of looking at how they might work differently. That we bring a diverse team of people together to go and solve the problem. And one of the things I've prided myself on in the team that we've built is they're not all from the analytics team, and they're not all from customer transformation, they're not all from technology teams or HCS and BTS. We've brought everybody together in some way, shape or form. And actually I think that's really important for what the valuable skills in the future are going to be, that it's not just going to be any one bucket. It's important that we bring the whole of our capability together. And the same with the client, actually, that I want to be co-creating this stuff with them, not just we're going to go into a dark room and disappear and develop something and bring it back. And that breadth and that diversity of team is then also our colleagues in technology, so working with client engineering, who are just an awesome group of people, and/or our partners, innovation teams. And so yes, we work a lot with IBM technology, and we have done a lot with Watson X, but we've also done lots with our partners, Microsoft, AWS, Adobe, increasingly with Salesforce, and SAP. I was spending some time last week looking at how we might do things there. So success to me is about how are we delivering some client value that hopefully will scale, because we want to take this to a much larger scale, but actually is meaningful to a client.
And just building on that to kind of close it, what's then, obviously you've done this loads, what's the general consensus? Is there a range of clients that are really keen, some that are more apprehensive, or are there recurring pain points with the clients?
So what's the general consensus? Firstly, we haven't had one that hasn't worked, which is interesting. So we've always found a way to be able to demonstrate that we can make this technology work and this capability work, from password resets where they couldn't give us any data and we had to use synthetic data, to understanding health and safety in mission critical situations, to understanding what rebates I might be due on contracts, we've done all sorts. And they've all worked in some way, shape or form. Now the question is whether or not they then go to scale. And so what we've got to get even better at is helping clients to that next step. And again, of the pilots that we've done, the majority of them are moving down the path to scale in some way, shape or form. And this is quite a sophisticated sales process, or quite a sophisticated delivery process. It's not just you're going to buy a widget, turn the widget on, and then buy 50 more widgets. This is quite sophisticated technology, for one, and two, it's changing the way that organisations work, and then there are questions of ethics, and there are questions of governance, and have we got the right data, and so on. And so it's not something that you just finish your pilot and you immediately go to scale. But I can't think of any client where we haven't progressed beyond that initial pilot to another conversation with the client on the top. It might not be in that area that the pilot has been in, but it's in an adjacent area, or actually we can go and use this somewhere else. In some cases it absolutely is. We've done the pilot, it's been a successful pilot, and we're now moving to a scale on that pilot.
That's really, really interesting, the success you're seeing in that. You spoke earlier about 60 or so briefs in a fairly short time period. How many of those progress, and what percentage?
So of that 60, I think we about, whatever it is, 50 out of the 60 went forward into a pilot.
Oh.
And we're still executing some of those, and then we're doing new briefings, and we're meeting new clients all the time. But we're out there speaking about what we're doing publicly as well. So I did a conference in Cannes, the World AI Conference, Cannes Festival, I should say. And this morning, somebody I met there, I spoke to the Institute of Actuaries this morning for one of their webinars. But then, each week we are meeting with new clients. We have had, in the last about 4 weeks, we've had 2 consumer companies, one retail, one consumer goods, in this building, 2 doors down from where we're recording, having innovation sessions about how they might think of AI. We've got another consumer goods company this week and another retailer this week, all about how they might apply this. New companies that we'd not briefed last year, we're now briefing this year, and again we're seeing a pipeline of work coming out the back of that.
In terms of your thoughts on the future, where you've seen it progressing, what excites you most?
What excites me most? I think we are standing at the edge of a transformation in the way that humans work with technology. And I think that is extremely exciting, and we have to be careful custodians of that as well. So what do I mean? I read probably about a year ago, just as I was getting into this, Reid Hoffman, who created LinkedIn and various other businesses. I listen to his podcast quite regularly. Wrote a book with ChatGPT called Impromptu. And he also is quoted as saying, he believes that this technology will have as profound an effect on knowledge work as the steam engine had on manual labour. And I haven't seen anything in the last year that makes me disbelieve that. And in fact, each day that I use our tooling within IBM's walls and in my personal life use tools that are outside of IBM's walls, of course. I have a food blog and I use generative AI to help me with that. So I get to play a lot with a lot of things, and every day is a school day at the moment, and I'm learning new things and thinking about different ways in which we can apply this. And so what really excites me is the democratization of this, and getting people to play with it, to understand what it can do and how they can use it. And then the flip side of this, and I do believe, if any of you've seen me speak, I have this analogy of the Roman god Janus, which is a two-faced coin. One face is beautiful, one face is ugly, and a bit like Harvey Dent in Batman. How do you make sure that you're considering the implications of what you do? And just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean you should. And even if you should and you can, how do you make sure that you govern that and you do it in a ethical and appropriate way? And so I think what excites me is the amazing potential of this technology to work with humans to change the way that we work. And tempering that is, how do we do that in a proper and grown up and mature way, so that it's of benefit to everybody in society, not just the those that have, rather than those that have not.
And just going back to your 60 examples, you said you've gone to clients, obviously most of these clients, in fact all of them probably, are going to have some form of technology involved. Where do you see AI being compatible with other technologies, and do you think there are synergies to unlock that we haven't kind of explored yet?
Yeah, I think there's some interesting, so I think some technologies have not yet had their day, that we maybe have kind of saw them as flash in the pans and then not have gone very far. And actually I think the blending of some technologies together will be interesting. So I think blockchain hasn't yet had its day, and I think generative AI and blockchain, I think there's going to be something between those. And what do I mean by that is, as I go and create content, how am I going to be able to prove what that content has been created from? What was the data set I used? What was the model I used? At what point in time was that valid for me to use that content? And I think there might be something there. I also think AR and VR haven't...
Just for AR and VR?
Yeah, so augmented reality and virtual reality, or mixed reality. So we've seen some interesting things with Apple's Vision Pro, very much in the B2B space, which is where I think that product will be in the near term. And when you think about, I don't know, let's say you're a car mechanic, and you've got, I remember doing some work years and years ago with Ford, and there are so many versions of the Ford Transit, it is unbelievable. And they make custom versions. So like an ice cream van is quite different to I can't think of another example, but a burger van or
for example.
all sorts of different formulations of what is essentially the same product. But so significant can those formulations be that when you open the hood and you look into the engine, what is the windscreen washer fluid on one, it'll be on the left hand side, and it's on the right hand side of another because of the adaptations they've got on it, and it all is wired differently. And you might never have seen this before. So if you could imagine a mechanic who's going to go and fix this, they're wearing augmented goggles so they can see through to the real world. They can also have data that's appearing in front of them. How do I fix this? Okay, well, I don't want to be using a phone. I don't want to be typing in on a computer because I'm inherently fixing a physical thing. So my ability to talk, for the machine to understand my language, large language models, to be able to say, okay, you need to unscrew this way, and actually show me what it looks like to unscrew that, open that up, me reach, no, that's not the right part, it's the part to the north of that, right? And so to be able to do that in an environment where I maybe can't use my hands to interact, I think will be a big thing. And those technologies coming together, I can see applications of that will be really interesting, and again change the way that we work.
So almost unparalleled opportunities out there.
Yes, I think so. But the again, I'll come to the flip side of the coin. As I said, I came from Huddersfield. Huddersfield was and is the home of textiles, or one of the homes of textiles in the UK. It's also the home of a group of men who were led by John Ludd, who during the Industrial Revolution went around smashing up looms because they were concerned about how it was going to impact jobs. And ironically, now when you talk about somebody who doesn't understand technology, you call them a Luddite. And these men were known as the Luddites. And I would argue that they actually did understand technology pretty well. But what I don't think they could do was imagine what are the new businesses and the new capabilities that would come from that innovation, that industrial revolution. And if you look at where our fashion industry and our textile industry and synthetic garments and all sorts of stuff that has happened since that innovation, it was that they couldn't see. And so what I think we have to do is to imagine not only how do we do more productivity, because naturally human beings love productivity, but what are the new businesses that we can go and create, and what are the things that you could do no other way than by using these technologies, and then take everybody with us on that journey.
I'm conscious of time. I could sit here and talk to you for hours about this, so thank you so much for coming on for a start. One last question. We've asked this to Mike, we asked it to Seb last week. What's your one-liner on AI?
That's a good question, isn't it? What's your one-liner on AI? This is about humans and machines working together, and that's where the value lies.
Okay, super. Thank you so much.
We're starting a new initiative this week, so we would like to know a question about AI from you, and at the start of our next episode, we're going to ask the next guest the question you give us, and then they're going to hand over.
Okay.
So what question?
Who's your next guest? I'm joking. That would be a bit mean.
All things being well, Paul Briscoe.
All things being well, Paul Briscoe. Okay. I think one of the bits we haven't touched on, and I think is really important, is what are the skills you think the next generation need? And I think Paul is a very thoughtful and very smart person, and he has been such a support of the work that I've been doing, and I've really appreciated working with him and Helen Gordon from the HCSH side of the house. I'm in the BTS side of the house, so that's our business transformation services piece and our hybrid cloud services piece, and actually working together has been great, and I think he will have some very thoughtful ideas around that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So before we finish, 3 highlights from today's episode. First of all, we discussed Jez and his history studying at Cambridge Natural Sciences and how he's now moved into consultancy. Second of all, we discussed generating client interest and how we can use a variety of methods to engage clients and get them on board with Gen AI. And also what a successful brief is going to look like. And finally, we discussed the future of AI, understanding technology and how it's going to interact with other tech and humans. Jez, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time, both.
Thank you very much.